Where in where in
Well,
Arizona are you?
I'm in Scottsdale.
I love it
Scottsdale.
there. Oh my God, I love
Yes.
it there.
Yeah. So, hey guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Master Your Mental podcast. I'm very excited to have the beautiful Katie Chonacas with us today. Katie does many cool things, you guys. She is the host of the She's All Over the Place podcast. She's an artist, on-screen actor, poet, painter, and musician. So without further ado, welcome Katie to the podcast.
Thank you, Paris. I appreciate you and I love your name.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here and just to dive into this conversation because we actually connected through an awesome friend, both of ours, Robin. So shout out to Robin for setting up the connection. I was super excited to learn more about you, your story, and all the stuff that you're working on. So before we go ahead and dive on into that, I would love if you can just kind of tell us, a little bit more about yourself and what lights you up.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So thank you for the beautiful introduction.
Of course.
I'm a poet first and foremost, I'm just a full art head. So anything artistic, I paint, I doodle. I love traveling the world. I've been around the world. I'm a self-published author. A lover's fairy tale.com is my new poetry book. So maybe we'll chat about that and the psychology of how that intertwines, into mental health and life and creativity. I love being on screen, working as an actor in TV and film, comedy and drama. I definitely success is measured. And so I've had a very successful career working with De Niro, Pacino, Nicolas Cage, all in one year. And, Morgan Freeman, Antonio Banderas, Jessica Simpson, a bunch of like really cool actors and humans. And I had the grand opportunity to tour around the world with 50 Cent in the G Unit camp, opening up in front of like 18,000 people, which was pretty epic. It was in the time of like when like I was going by Katie Coco. It was like when Lady Gaga was popular. They were trying to make me like the next Britney Spears. Yeah. And then so like, poetry, music, acting, painting, DJ, I mean, they all go hand in hand for me. Creating. So I feel like our purpose here is to create. My birthday's 11/11. I'm Greek. I'm very Greek. I feel like Socrates is like my older brother, like my spiritual older brother. And I do voiceovers. So I do voiceovers every single day. I'm in my voiceover booth right now. So I love animation. I love making other people feel good. I love lighting other people up, by being open with my heart and my vulnerability. Because I feel like when there's a neurological connection, when I open myself and I make the choice to be the leader and lead with love and empathy, when I lead with those, I feel it breaks down the invisible barriers where people feel so comfortable with me and they tell me so many things. And so at first, a lot of people are very skeptical, and some people love it. There's different kinds of people who, decide if they like it or if they're skeptics to it. But eventually the skeptical ones, they're the most intense, analytical, jaded, hard ones, where it's like, it's like, for me, it's an interpersonal challenge to, keep sharing and keep giving them love. Cause I feel like they're the ones that need it the most. And I know how that is, needing a lot of love.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love all of that. And it's so cool, like all the different things that you do and like terms of art and like how involved you are in like different aspects of that process, like that creative process you were getting into. And like, I love how you kind of compare that to like the reason we're here and alive, right? Is to create and to form those connections and to, help others along the path with that. So, something we got into right before recording was we were talking a little bit about, kind of in terms of like preparing for auditions and stuff, like what you would do before and kind of, growing up and like, relying more on like the yellow pages and then actually going into auditions and like having that, be an impact, like in terms of like having anxiety and like social anxiety and like trying to get ready and prepare and like all this stuff like that. So I would love if you can like talk about like, what was that like? Because I know like there's definitely a big difference now, like after the pandemic, like you told me about everything's more digital online, like you're doing more interviews and stuff across
Yeah.
Zoom instead of, having to drive like 40 minutes and try to find the parking lot. Like you were saying, like trying to figure out where everything is. So talk to me about like, what was that like in terms of like managing anxiety and like when you were getting ready to do auditions or when you were there auditioning, like what was helpful for you in terms of overcoming that anxiety and like being able to be yourself in front of the audition or different things like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, and that could be split into so many different directions. But continuing on the path of what you're speaking about, I feel every individual needs to find the tools that's good for them. There would be some individuals when I show up at auditions, they have headphones on, and it was a way for them to tune out everyone else, because when there's like 5 to 7 gorgeous girls in the room, right? And it's like and you know how girls and humans can be comparing, is a death threat, being catty, being chatty. Some people say things just to psych you out. Like, I mean, it's very competitive, right? So, some casting directors are very particular of like when they have appointments with your scheduled appointment. That's why it's very particular, on their side, it's a business for you to be there like on time, a bit early, not too early, because that's someone else's time. But if you're late, that's like really frustrating, and that can be very emotional, not only for the other actors and the whole production, but for yourself, because you want to have your equilibrium. It's about like how much sleep you got, how much did you prepare, are you off book studying the craft, like, you have representation, like just the psychology and the mental health of getting representation in the entertainment industry is its own thing. But like, let's say we're on the playing field, that I have a good strong team who are actually getting me appointments that can put me out for the TV shows. I just went out for Dickinson. Oh my god, I'm a poet, so I love that show. If any artist, people, someone who loves language, Dickinson's amazing. But to understand, like, I'm going out for an opportunity, and then I need to like know the craft, know my role. Like, I'm an empath, so and I'm my human design. I'm a projector, so I know my human design, and I know my certain center points of my chakras and my internal being. My receptors are open. I'm very empathic. I pick up on other people's energy, so I need to know, like, okay, before going into this audition, so I'm not carrying other people's energy. I'm not feeling so chaotic and spun out. I might need to go, if I, after driving maybe 40 minutes to Fox, to get on the lot and then to park, or Warner Brothers or Paramount or something, I might need to go into the bathroom. A lot of actors do this. They'll kind of like go to the bathroom and just kind of like regroup themselves. I mean, it's a lot, finding parking places and going through the security, walking on the lot, and then walking and seeing people. So sometimes I'll just go to the bathroom and I'll run cool water on my wrists, and sometimes I'll run cool water on my neck, and that cools me down, and it kind of empties my vessel so I can kind of reset. um I wasn't hip on bringing the headphones like a lot of younger actors were, but then I got hip to it, and I started having my headphones. It's in also sometimes the glasses. Like, I don't need glasses, but sometimes I would wear glasses to auditions just to like protect myself from someone feeling like they're burning, looking straight into my soul, you know?
Wow. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that how, you just like really break that down in terms of like what it was like for you. Cause I know like there's obviously like a big difference, right? Like in terms of today, like following like the pandemic, like doing things more online and digital and like having to deal with that. So like have you noticed, because we were kind of talking about this a little bit, but have you noticed a difference in terms of what it's like now, like doing, your auditions now and compared to how they were, where you would have to drive and like get out and like, go in, walk into the building, try to find the parking, do all this stuff. Like, cause I think you were telling me a little bit of like kind of how it's different and kind of what you enjoy more about doing it now. So like, talk to me about kind of like the difference
sure.
there. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, sometimes I have 17 voiceover auditions in one day. I mean, sometimes I'll just like, during the pandemic, there was so many auditions. Like, there's so many voiceover auditions. So on a psychological level, to set up my mic, to set up my laptop, to set up my iPad, to set everything up. It's so time consuming and frustrating instead of just plopping down on my stool and just plugging in my, and hitting record. Like, it's just so easy. So as an on-screen actor also, I need to have a designated room, which I do, where the tripod's set up, the backdrop is set up, everything's set up. The batteries are always charged, always there's always a backup battery. It's always at the outlet. So all I need to do is hit record. You just put a lighting on. You have to have the lighting set up, and because you have to book a coach. You have to prepare with a coach, someone who's going to read with you, and then you click and you do the audition. Because you have to understand, like, getting into the character, like, that's the number one thing. But now with the pandemic and self-taping, it's great because I prefer self-taping because it's like, if you have everything set up, some people don't like the technical thing and setting everything up. But if you have an area where it's always just set up and you have to set it up every time, that really frustrates me. I get very emotionally unbalanced. It's not good. It's horrible. So it's like a baby. Like, a baby needs its crib, a baby needs to sleep, a baby needs, and in Paris, you need this for you. So we get to understand how we're hardwired and what we need, and not apologize it. And a lot of times I've been inauthentic. I'm authentic, but a lot of times I've been inauthentic. I spent years inauthentic to myself, to people please, to make others feel better, to play myself small instead of just like taking up my space. Like, I know what it's like to take up space and not feel sorry for it. And that's my innate nature. But then I went along the journey where I did what I just said. So as an artist, not only as a human being, whether you're an artist or not, just being a human being, knowing your space, knowing your boundaries, and honoring that, and not having to explain yourself over and over about it, because that's just going to ruffle up the lizard brain even more. So we're like getting all frustrated and intense instead of being calm, and to respond and to react and let people know, like, hey, like, this is who I am and this is what I need. So I think it's great for me to have my designated area, and then I can record as many takes as I want. There's 2 takes. I can record the first scene 4 times, watch them. For me, it's sometimes you feel it, like, oh, this is a good take, this is it. Sometimes but sometimes you're so in your own self. You need your manager, your acting coach. You send the file to them and you're like, hey, which ones, like,
Yes.
here are 4 takes, and they tell you, because they're on your team, and they see you in a different vibe and different light, and from what you're feeling inside. So it's good to have an emotional support team of people who can be there to hold your hand and communicate with you in a supportive way.
Wow. I really love that, especially the point that you just brought up right there of, really being your authentic self, and having had moments where you didn't fully feel that. I think that's so amazing that you're able to do that, because I feel like, it's probably a pretty common thing to like experience that at times, especially when, if you're younger and you're first like trying to get started and like, acting, or like doing the work that you do with voiceovers or anything, where you're putting yourself in a position to, do these things in front of other people and like put those like roles out there.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that. And I would love to ask, like for you, like what has been the most helpful in like overcoming those moments where you felt like you had to be, I guess, like this other person, or like you had to do things a certain way, but you didn't really feel that like in yourself or in your body, like I want to do this, but you felt like you kind of like had to do it this way. Like what has been the most helpful for you in terms of, overcoming that to really just do it the way that you want to, the way that you are most comfortable, and the way that is like the most just aligned with who you are and everything that you're about?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I had to really unhook from some people. What comes up for me is silence. I love solitude. So to be with self, and just to get quiet and just rest, and allow those heavy weights that came on to just let them come off. And to definitely stay creative and keep going. Like when the pandemic happened, I double tripled down, and now I have over 4,000 monthly listeners, and the show keeps growing, and I'm so grateful. But last October I had 2,000. I hit my 2,000 mark last October, and it was like, oh, we're celebrating your 1 year anniversary, 2,000. And I'm just like, oh my God, wow. And it's like now in just a short amount of time, I've grown, rapidly. So by being consistent, by taking everything and putting it into my art, to be in action, to be in spirit, inspired, to get out of my own self, be interested. I think people are more interesting when you're interested. Um, and this one author, I watched her TED talk, and it was like, she has a book called U-Turn. Her name's Ashley Stoll, and she actually helped me out during the pandemic, where she had this joy journal, JOY, a joy journal. And I'm like, I'm gonna make a joy journal, and I'm gonna make a commitment for 40 days to do a joy journal, because if you're a writer, you have writer's block. Sometimes you're ruminating, it's going on over your head. But if you actually write down, so I took her theory and then I made it my own. I did a joy journal, and then on the next page it was a bothersome journal. So sometimes I would just need to write down everything that bothered me before I felt the subtle transition of going to the joy. Or sometimes I
Oh,
would just be,
wow.
oh yeah.
I
So
love
then,
that. Oh my
thank
gosh.
you. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And then, but sometimes I would just be able, and then write down the joy. But sometimes I would just be able to just go right for the joy. Like, I'm grateful for number one, my health, my 91-year-old grandmother. I'm always number one. I'm always just grateful for my health, because without our physical and mental health, we don't have anything. But with that, we have everything on our joy, and we have everything on our bothersome with our health.
That is such a cool idea. That is such a cool
Yeah.
concept. That's so awesome. Like, cause I feel like for me, in terms of like gratitude journaling, right? Like you mentioned, kind of writing out the things that bring you joy and like what you enjoy in your life. And in terms of especially bringing up mental and physical health, I love that you brought that up because, I agree with you 100%. If we don't have, if we aren't in this spot that, we want to be with our mental health or in terms of our physical health, it gets really difficult, to really, recognize a lot of the things that we have in our life that are already amazing. Sometimes it can be hard to see that when we are going through different things or, we're transitioning or we're struggling with something or we're dealing with, going through a period of depression or, we
Oh,
lost someone close to us or something, something big is happening or not even if it's big, maybe it could be a small thing or it doesn't matter what it is, those things and, just the way that that can impact us and really, set us up for to really be creative and in that process and be able to like create the art that you're talking about, in terms of writing and being a writer and, doing all of these projects and being part of all of these things. I feel like that's such a core thing right there to really work on, prioritize that. So I'd love to ask, like, what do you do, on like like a daily basis or just regularly to really like prioritize your mental and physical health?
okay, sure. I just want to make a comment real quick on what you just said. Sometimes, like, it's not the physical, the thought form that turns into action, that turns into the materialistic, but sometimes we're holding guilt and fear. We're holding
Mm.
like generational guilt and fear. We're holding all this guilt and fear. I mean, I have a short story of like, being 13, and it was the first homecoming game, and my the seven girls who were my friends, all of a sudden I show up, my mom and dad drop me off, and I'm walking, and this girl's just glaring at me, and then everyone else in the circle took her side instead of mine. And in that moment, instead of being vulnerable and sharing what happened, or them asking me like, hey, what's this, they just automatically like just put a wall up, and I took on that blame, and I took on that shame like it was my own. And then I
Mm.
see the trajectory of my life now, of carrying that from when I was 13, and then unhooking from that guilt and fear. And that leads to my single, or my EP, that I just released, that's encoded with quantum physics by a scientist named Eric Thompson over at Subtle Energy. It's 396 healing frequencies, which removes guilt and fear. So in the pandemic, I created my first EP, and I chose the Solfeggio frequencies of 639, which fosters forgiveness
Oh,
for self. And I felt like on
wow. I love that. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
I felt like on a planetary level with the pandemic, we all needed to do a lot more forgiving of one another. And I felt like my vessel, like I know I need, look at me and who I am and what I've done. All right. I mean, who am I and what have I done? Right. But seriously, right. It could go different ways, but no, but like being active, being ambitious, like going out there, being a creator, it's like, accomplishing things. And I had so much forgiveness for myself, my family, my friends, my circumstances, people in my entertainment industry, people who I allowed, by being a young entrepreneur, a businesswoman, to be taken seriously, having like feeling I needed to put up a shield and I could quote unquote take on those things, but I didn't need to take on those things, even though I could. But I'm like, oh, I could prove to myself and prove to others that I'm a businesswoman, that I could take on those things. I didn't need to quote unquote take on those things, but I chose to. And that comes from the psychology of taking on that fear and guilt from when I was 13 years old, and maybe not having the communication skills to let people know, because when you're 13 and 14 you're scared and you don't
Mhm.
talk about those things, you just kind of take it on. So now we're talking more about mental health, now we're talking about these things, that's why we're connected, that's why we're on the podcast sharing, so we can change the energy and the vibration of evolution. So I did the forgiveness EPK. It's under the Sophisticated Psychos YouTube and streaming everywhere. Listen to it. And then I did the hypnotic energy EP for forgiveness. And I did the EP Full House to remove the guilt and fear, right? And so while I'm writing and journaling in the joy journal, the bothersome journal, I'm writing about stuff I didn't even know. I'm just writing it. And the last part about that is, you go back, and then she says to circle, and then you go and you circle what repeat keeps going up. For me, it's my toes in the sand at the beach. I'm a beach girl. I'm a jungle baby. I prefer being naked. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
mother nature. I prefer just like being like naked with my soul and with that's God, just nature. And
Yes.
then lastly about that is like like you said, it can be the very simplest thing. Like for me, it's like I just love that coffee or that bird or that butterfly. It can be the simplest thing that could bring you joy, right? Write those
Oh,
things down.
I love that. And I just really love too how you bring up the aspect of forgiveness and like the role that forgiveness plays, like, and how you relate that to the example you gave of being 13 and like carrying that shame and that guilt and then taking that on. And then also in terms of like being a young entrepreneur and knowing like I don't need to take these things on, but I'm choosing to take these things on to do this. And I love how you like have that, we're able to like make that connection and like put those together and like piece it together, because that's like such an awesome awareness to have, because I feel like there's certain moments, in our lives, like whether like things happen when we were younger or older or whatever time that these things took place, that we, that really form or like kind of mold more of who we are because of this experience, or whether it's a traumatic thing that happened that really has like impacted us in a really severe way that we take moving forward. And I love how you talk about that in terms of like for having that forgiveness for yourself and realizing like, hey, like I don't need to do these things, and if I don't want to, I don't have to, because I feel like it can be very overwhelming, especially like when you're going through all this stuff and you're building these things and creating all this stuff and putting all this out into the world, to feel like you have to do all of it, and like you can't say no, you have to do all of it. And I feel like that's so awesome that you like talk about that in terms of like how you came to realize that, and like especially associating that with being 13 and like having that experience of like going into that game and then like having this thing happen where you're like, where you like you don't know how to respond or react, but that it impacted you and it affected you, but you just don't know like in that moment like what do I say to like these people, or like how do I express this? Because I feel like that's another thing like that comes up for me when I think of all the stuff like this. It's super creative, whether it's like putting a piece of art out there, or like writing a memoir, or putting, like you said, releasing an EP, or doing these things and doing it for a greater purpose, like you said, to teach people how to learn about the like the mechanism of being forgiving, because I feel like that can be a big impact. Because I know for myself, it took me probably years, from where I used to be when I was younger to try to get to where I am now. And then we're always evolving, right? That's what I think is the most beautiful thing, is we're never really done with learning. You know, we always have more opportunities and, you know, more things in front of us that really teach us more things. You know, we're never done. So I think that's such a beautiful thing too. And I would love to ask you, you know, just in terms of like all the stuff that you've done, like everything you've been a part of, everything that you've created and like put out into the world, you know, like what has been your either like your favorite piece of art or your favorite thing that you've been a part of or done?
I mean, oh wow, that could go into a couple different directions, but I guess on a personal level, um, so we create. I don't know if these pieces I'm writing from when I'm 13, if my grandkids are going to read them and maybe that's all that they are, or what they'll lift into, but I write, and I'm a poet, and so then I created spoken word music videos. And it was like, it wasn't a thing people were doing. Like, I remember this one music exec was this one music exec was pairing me to um I think Tori Amos or something like that. Like, she did like a spoken word album or something. You know, they compared me to like Jewel, like very, you know, like very poetic. Um, but I did these spoken word pieces because I created it and I wanted to do them. And then while I was doing these spoken word pieces, like music, it's called hooks. So then my friend who's a DJ is like, people like can't retain the information. They can't keep going. You have to put these hooks. So then I started putting the hooks in my spoken word. I started doing these videos. I self-invested. I produced them. I got the people. I got the location. I got the hair, the makeup, the editor, the cameras. Like, I mastermind and got it all for like no money. Like, in, you know, in my early 20s, like, we're all like kids creating. So like, no one's getting paid for any of these things. They're just coming off my energy, off my vision, off my intention, off of the fact that people want to help people and people want to create. So to be able to be a producer, and this is going to the side, but I created some web series and I created some short films to give non-union actors an opportunity to be union, to get the new media contract, to give non-union actors an opportunity to create, and then just to give artists an opportunity to create, for being on my podcast, to saying, hey, I want to honor your journey and your story, to hold space for them. This empowers me. It makes me feel good. It's not about fame and the egoic fame and how many times I've been there. I'm already Janis Joplin and back. I'm already Britney Spears and back. I mean, I'm everyone you can think of. Ariana Grande, go for it. Like, I'm all of them, honey. I am all of them and all that and more.
I love it.
But it's the illusion, it's the fantasy. So circling back around, I traveled the world, and when I traveled the world, I was from, you know, some things that happened so early on in childhood, and being an empath and so sensitive, I closed myself off. I was very in love, and I was very loving unconditionally from my Greek roots, but I chose to be celibate for 7 years. And I went around the world, and I was on private jets, and I was in 5-star hotels. And I mean, it was creme de la creme with the 1% of the 1%. I was on a private jet every single week for a year and a half. But I was celibate. So I saw, you know, in brushstrokes, you would see, not all the time, girls, and they were running around with their bags and mini skirts and, you know, sugar daddying it up and doing all those things, you know, abusing power, abusing the divine femininity in a way for an exchange of the fame and the monetization of, you know, being involved in a slick, slimy world. You know, and then, you know, that's one area. Not everyone, but I'm just saying it's out there. So I was able to observe all those people, and I felt, you know, with my strong roots, my morals and my values, and being integrous with myself and the commitment I made to myself to travel the world, and I was celibate. I wanted to see the world untainted. I wanted to see the world, because it's such a gift that we're here. There's a TED Talk. It says it's 1 in over 400 trillion, the chances that we're here. So for us to even be on this podcast and the listener to be here is like so aligned and attuned and magnificent and meant to be, more than we'll ever understand and know. But the thing is, I was celibate for 7 years, and I was and what I wanted to do was, I wanted to honor the gift of me being here in this world, and to fill up my cup 1000% full, because I also saw growing up, oh, my boyfriend won't let me do this. Oh, my boyfriend broke up with me, or this or this. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that whiny
Yes.
crap. I don't want
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
I don't want my neurological patterns and my thoughts and my notions, my emotions to be tainted by what's been given to me. I want to go and
Mhm.
experience this life, because I also heard that, when you have a child, it's not about you anymore. It's about them. Some are detrimental. Oh, like it's not about you. Your life's over. But no, I've also found the kinship in motherhood of growing with that child, and then having the bonds to do things with children and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but I always knew I wanted children later on in life. And these ventures that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, those have been my babies. I've been birthing these ideas and dabbling and going and playing out these illusions and fantasies and emotions. And so, with all of that being said, She's All Over the Place podcast birth. And then I traveled the world and I wrote poetry, and then I did spoken word music videos as a director, as a producer, as an expressional artist, musician, actor. I created these videos. And then during the pandemic, I'm always like, where's one place I want to go and I haven't been? But with the pandemic, like, it's been March was 1 year. I haven't been on a plane. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are, but I'm very safe in particular, and I'm an ambivert. I was very, very extrovert for 2 decades, and so I'm very introverted. So I've been
Yeah.
taking this
Hmm.
time to dismantle the 2 decades of experiences of entertainment, traveling the world, to be now to go very introverted. And then so I said to myself on 11/11 for my birthday, what's something I've always wanted to do that I haven't done yet? So for me, I was like, oh, I want to be a published author. And then it's a whole psychology in another podcast of everything you had to go through just to
Hmm.
be self published and to be accepted and acknowledged. And there wasn't Amazon when I was 12, but there's Amazon now. So I know people have qualms about environmental issues and what they feel about Amazon, but I empowered myself and I became self published. Not only did I become
I
self published,
I love it. I love it so much. That's so cool.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
not
Okay, so I'll put all the links to everything in the show notes for you guys, but you guys can probably already tell that Katie is really cool. Like you've done a lot. And how old are you? How old are you?
I'm 40.
No way. Are you
Yeah.
joking? You are.
No.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
not. I can't. I literally will probably need to like have like your ID because I just don't believe. Like I do not believe it. Like I swear right now. Like I'm like she's probably like 28, 29, 28. That's just so cool to me. Like all the things that you've been able to do, and just in terms of like not just creation, but just like exploring being alive and just like traveling and doing the poetry, the writing, all this stuff, because that's so beautiful to me that, like just the way you express it. And I can tell just from like hearing you talk that like you have so much passion and you have so much energy. And I love that. Like when I find people like that, cause it's like, I don't know, it just lights me up. Like I always feel like I leave these conversations and I'm just like, wow, like that was so
Yeah.
cool just to hear like, your experiences and like a little bit about your story and kind of like how all of this has come together. Like, I'm just grateful, that we got the chance to connect and like really like have this conversation and kind of get into the details of, all the different things we did today. Like, it was just so cool and like so much fun. And I really just can't wait to share it with the world. And I mean, even go on your podcast. Your podcast is so cool, you guys. It's also, I will link all the stuff in the show notes so you guys can check it out and follow Katie and check out more of her work and the awesome stuff she is doing. But this has been such a great episode. Like I'm so excited right now. And I just like I love it. I mean, I love this topic as especially like talking about art and like how that relates to mental health and mindset and
Yeah.
all these moving pieces that we were able to like cover and get into. I love it so much. So I just want to thank you once again for like creating the time, to come out here and like have this talk with me. So thank you so much. And, thank you guys for, tuning in and listening. And, whether it's morning or nighttime or whatever time it is, I hope that you guys all have a great rest of your day. And I'm going to end it on that note and say goodbye to you guys and goodbye to Katie. And thank you, Katie, for coming out. It's been great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye, girl.
See ya.